Howdy, folks. I want to talk to you about seminar papers in this. Now, you're not limited to doing it this way. There are a lot of broad concepts in the Star Wars universe, but part of the academia thing is the strong essay. And what you're thinking when you hear essay, you should be thinking research paper. This course requires English 102 as a prereq. What that means is you have been trained in how to write a research paper. The idea is that by making English 102 a prereq, I sacrifice the ability to get more people into this class, which is something you want so I can convince everyone that this class needs to be run and I can just talk about Star Wars for the rest of my life. That is the job imperative. So if I could make English 101 a prereq, I would. But what I then couldn't do is say, write a research paper and walk away, which I need to be able to do. The seminar paper is the next level. All right, gang, this is also part of your training for when you transfer out of here, because it's a little odd. It's not wrong, but it's unusual that I would give a seminar paper to a sophomore, right? That's more of a junior year thing. The idea is that you're working with your own angle towards all of the stuff, the same way I'm giving you an angle. The angle of this class is how the Force is, if not a piece of nature, actually nature itself. If you can wrap your head around that, you understand how I approach Star Wars. And this is my profession. I am an eco-critic. I look at how nature appears in a text, and I do not hit it with this symbolic notion. I hit it with this is literal nature. So I look at the world of Star Wars and I say, in the universe, the natural world functions like this. And in that universe is the objective fact of the Force. And the Force works in very particular ways that are not always obvious. But through enough sources, enough varied material that spans decades, we can pinpoint, we can infer, we can exactly define how the Force is functioning, what its inherent role, and the subsequent values it develops. And that is how I look at the Force. You have as a suite of examples for your seminar papers, the series of articles which mine that framework, that line of thought, is included in. It was a special edition of the Journal of Religion and Popular Culture. Now, I really truly believe in giving you those types of examples. I'm not going to dust off student papers and give them to you. I am going to ask too much of you every single time. Everything I ask of my students is more than perhaps they are capable of. The idea being is that if I ask you to get an 130 on any of these papers, then when you fail to do so, you're only at a 100. That's the idea. I need you to swing for the fences every time. I need you to give everything every time so that when you fail to be perfect, you have not failed to be great. That's the idea. So, I won't be dusting off student papers for you on this one, but I might be able to give you some examples of topics that people went into. Just a sense of the range. I had a young woman write a very cool paper on Jawas as culture. And so she took all of these canonical sources of Jawas and really just went into how those create the sense of Jawa. Right? So you can dig in that kind of specificity. I had another student who he really signed up for the course because he used to love Star Wars and then he kind of fell out of love with Star Wars. And so his entire paper was about examining the academic side of what happened for that. And he found it rooted in all of these re-editings, these editions, these versions that are produced for Star Wars. And so he looked at how all of these pieces fell together, what was what was changed, what was re-altered with all of the digital edits and all of these things. What was Star Wars at its heart based on? What shifted as Lucas re-released these things? So I give you these examples because you've got someone looking at a very specific moment, space in the universe with Jawa culture, right? And then you also have someone looking at a very metatextual, outside of the universe that is created within Star Wars, question of what is Star Wars. So I want you to be thinking with that range of notion. Of course, there are people who are looking at what is the nature of the Force and how does it function and work and all of these things. So that's all in there too. I want you to be going after seminar papers as research papers, as academic questions. There are things in Star Wars that can be argued, can be asserted, but can only be inferred through strong, sturdy analysis that provides examples. You are looking to make a claim about Star Wars. And this claim is that if you want to master Star Wars, you need to understand this. And there are a million things that fit that category. This is your freedom. What is most interesting to you about Star Wars? What do you think you can argue, explain, describe that if someone wants to master the text of the Star Wars saga, what can you give them that if they didn't know, they wouldn't have mastered it? Okay? And this is not a simple thing, but this is what analysis is. This is why English 102 needed to happen, because English 102 is not a regurgitation of what other people have said. We don't need you to argue what I or others have published about this. We don't need you to repeat that. We need you to find what is missing, what has not been said. We need you to identify those binding notions, those permanent ideas of Star Wars. And we need you to comment on them. We need you to show us what Star Wars says. Please revisit the course description. It has a lot of this in there. The dominant and persistent elements of Star Wars. That's what you're looking at. So take a look at the course description. It talks about how you could look at, I don't know, representations of race. Race is a very fascinating concept in sci-fi because you have all of these alien races that do something. And oftentimes it looks exactly like what we call race, ethnicity, delineations here in our real world. So what are the notions of that in Star Wars? And what happens when we see that, say, the Empire is mostly white males? What does that tell us? Does that make sense, gang, right? This is how we might investigate something valuable about Star Wars. We could also, I don't know, do the same thing with gender, okay? Especially representations of femininity, femaleness, both the ideas of strong female characters, but also of the male gaze as we sexualize femininity. All right, we haven't necessarily hit the movies that are going to be best for that, but you've already seen Padme functioning this whole thing. We just saw her as a pregnant woman. We saw her both kind of defined in terms of Anakin and her pregnancy, but never at the expense of her as a strong ruler, strong leader, strong mind, right? She tells Anakin, you're going down a path I cannot follow, and it's simultaneously breaking her heart, but never questioning or sacrificing her identity as an individual person. All right. And this could be the type of thing you're exploring based on just some scenes in Revenge of the Sith, but then see how they connect to other spaces. What is Leia doing? What is Rey doing? All of this stuff comes in. We're going to see when we watch Solo a feminine robot in a very, very appropriate and underrepresented archetype of womanness. And also when it appears in a droid, it takes on a cool academic potential. I'll leave it there. I don't want to hit spoilers. We're going to watch Solo. We're going to talk about it. But there are not just human, not just alien representations of gender in Star Wars. So perhaps you're interested in gender. Perhaps you're actually majoring in psychology and would like to major in gender studies when you transfer. Like, write about your major in Star Wars so that one day you can be like, listen, I'm writing a seminar paper for a senior class, and this is the framework you've talked about, and I'd like to apply it to Star Wars. And your professor's going to be like, you're talking about applying a framework of this class to a real world scenario. Please write that paper. Okay. This is your chance to make it about you. What interests you? What is your academic identity? And how does that look at Star Wars? I look at Star Wars and I see all of the nature in it because that's my profession. That's my fascination. What is yours? And so let's take a look at just a few other moments that could be paths you travel that are rooted in Revenge of the Sith. Just a couple notes that I had. I was thinking about not just messianic, like Christian and Judaic philosophy and theology messianic, but the act of chosenness at all, the act of destined as the one, right? This is huge. You were the chosen one. You were supposed to bring balance to the Force. And a lot of people really like to talk about balance of the Force, and they like to talk about it in this paper. And I'm not saying you can't, but I do want you to do some nuanced readings of this. What do you mean by balance? Do you mean literally that there is Vader and Sidious at the end of this film and Yoda and Obi-Wan at the end of the film? Is that what you mean by balance? Or do you mean what I mean by balance, an ecological framework, an equilibrium of sorts? And how do you define all of these things? You were supposed to bring balance to the Force. Cool. We don't have the original prophecy in, say, its original language and asking, is it being translated into Basic, the language of Star Wars, or is it being translated into English from Basic, right? These are all complications that circulate around this. And a lot of people love to go off into the Clone Wars animated and take a look at the Mortis planet and deal with this. That stuff appears in Rebels. And so this is what I mean by you're spreading out. You got to have all of these sources. And so if you're thinking about not just like balance of the Force, but the act of chosenness. Can the Force be balanced? What's going on? How can you interact with that? Be complex, be dynamic, be nuanced. But this is one of the themes of Revenge of the Sith and Star Wars as a whole. Balance, chosen, destiny, will of the Force, all of that stuff is circulating. So find a cool line of research that allows you to describe something, right? Again, we could take just the act of prophecy in Star Wars. What is prophecy about in Star Wars? And you could go that entire direction. If you're doing that, I would push you towards the Count Dooku book. It was actually an audiobook performance before it was a published book. It was written to be an audiobook full cast production. And so you could be looking at that. Like Dooku's training is very much locked in terms of engaging the old prophecies. And so there is an entire book right there just about prophecies. And so I would say, hey, get your hands on that. Boom, another source already done is just read a cool Star Wars book, or even better, listen on audiobook while you're in the car, while you're getting groceries, right? Do that. Another thing I'm thinking is, what is the role of the temple in the Jedi philosophy? And then what is the role of the Jedi in the light side of the Force? Are Jedi eternally light? Is everything a Jedi does the light side of the Force? And I think that this is where the tension comes that allows Sidious, just one person, to take over the entire Senate and thus make it an empire and defeat the Jedi Order. He got one person to do one thing, and all of a sudden the entire order is destroyed, right? This is an intensity. So how does that unfold? You could look at the role of government, the role of democracy in Star Wars. You don't need to be doing the Force at all. You already saw how the Taylor does make an argument that Lucas is thinking about American politics the entire time. So why would you not engage the concepts of government and concepts of democracy within Star Wars? What is Star Wars saying about how government, how democracy functions? Okay, there's a lot of quotes about democracy happening. You could do all sorts of things like this. What are you going to look at? What is your topic? What about Star Wars are you going to illuminate? Right? Luminous beings are we. So I want you thinking about the specifics, the details, the ability to make a claim about Star Wars in essay form that illuminates, that allows us deeper understanding of Star Wars, that if we were to set ourselves on the path to master Star Wars, to master the saga, what do we need to know? And what can you give us that we don't already know? This is still about you. This is still very much about your perspective. I need your seminar paper to be a seminar paper about Star Wars. But after that, I want it to be the most important information you can deliver us academically about the wars. Gang, that's the framework. Get on the boards. Hit me with what you want to do so we can get you doing it. Right, gang? Thank you. I'll catch you in the other vids.